Cleopatra remains one of the most famous figures in history. Yet the image that survives is often distorted. Popular culture remembers a seductress. Ancient propaganda portrayed a manipulative queen. Modern audiences often see a romantic heroine trapped between powerful men. But none of these versions fully explain why Cleopatra still commands attention more than 2,000 years later. Because Cleopatra was not simply a woman involved with powerful rulers. She was a ruler herself. And perhaps more importantly, she was one of the last leaders of an ancient world that was disappearing before her eyes. When we examine Cleopatra closely, we are not looking at a story about beauty or romance. We are looking at the psychology of survival, the psychology of influence, and the immense pressure placed upon a person who realizes that the fate of an entire civilization may rest on their own decisions. Cleopatra VII was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family that had ruled Egypt since the death of Alexander the Great. By the time she entered the world, the dynasty was already weakening. Internal conflicts were common. Family betrayals were expected. Brothers fought sisters. Sisters fought brothers. Assassinations were political tools rather than shocking events. The kingdom remained wealthy, but its independence was becoming fragile. To the north, Rome was growing stronger every year. Egypt still appeared powerful. But beneath the surface, its future was increasingly dependent on forces beyond its control. This environment shaped Cleopatra from childhood. She learned early that survival required intelligence, not merely knowledge, political intelligence. The ability to understand motivations, the ability to read people, the ability to adapt. Unlike many of her predecessors, Cleopatra invested heavily in language and diplomacy. Ancient sources suggest she spoke multiple languages and communicated directly with various groups throughout her kingdom. This may sound like a minor detail. It was not. Many rulers remained separated from their subjects through layers of advisors and interpreters. Cleopatra sought direct connection, direct influence, direct control. Even as a young woman, she appears to have understood a fundamental principle of power. People are easier to lead when they believe you understand them. Her rise to power was anything but smooth. After the death of her father, she was expected to rule alongside her younger brother according to dynastic custom. Instead, political rivals pushed her aside. She was forced into exile. Many rulers disappear from history after such setbacks. Cleopatra did not. She returned. And she returned by exploiting divisions within the most powerful state in the Mediterranean. Rome itself was experiencing civil war. Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt pursuing his rival Pompey. Cleopatra recognized an opportunity. History often focuses on the dramatic image of her secretly entering Caesar's presence. Whether every detail of that story is accurate matters less than what it reveals. She understood presentation. She understood timing. Most importantly, she understood that influence often begins with attention. Caesar became her ally. With Roman military support, Cleopatra regained her throne. But this alliance was not simply personal. It was strategic. Egypt needed protection. Caesar needed resources. Each provided something the other lacked. For a time, the arrangement worked. Yet power creates new psychological realities. Success changes how people perceive the world. Early victories often reinforce confidence. Repeated victories can create something more dangerous, the belief that exceptional outcomes are becoming normal. Cleopatra's position strengthened dramatically during these years. She became associated with the most powerful man in Rome. Her authority within Egypt expanded, her ambitions expanded alongside it. When Caesar was assassinated in Rome, the world shifted again. The political order she had relied upon suddenly vanished. Many leaders would have retreated into caution. Cleopatra did not. Instead, she aligned herself with another rising Roman figure, Mark Antony. This relationship would become one of the most famous political partnerships in history. And once again, popular imagination often misses the deeper reality. Their alliance was not built solely upon romance. It was built upon mutual interests. Antony required wealth and stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. Cleopatra required protection from growing Roman threats. Together they constructed a powerful bloc. For a period, it appeared remarkably successful. Their influence stretched across vast territories. Their wealth was immense. Their political reach expanded. This was the peak of Cleopatra's power. But peaks create unique dangers. The higher leaders climb, the harder it becomes to distinguish confidence from overconfidence. One of the most consistent patterns throughout history is that successful individuals gradually lose contact with opposing viewpoints. Not because they intentionally reject criticism. As criticism becomes increasingly rare, subordinates become cautious, allies become dependent, dissent becomes uncomfortable. Over time, leaders hear fewer warnings. Cleopatra and Antony operated within an environment increasingly shaped by loyal supporters and shared ambitions. The Roman politician Octavian, later known as Augustus, understood this perfectly. Rather than attacking them solely through military means, he launched a campaign of perception. He portrayed Antony as corrupted, manipulated, controlled by a foreign queen. The narrative spread throughout Rome. Whether it reflected reality mattered less than whether people believed it. This marked a turning point. Cleopatra had always excelled at influence. Now she found herself becoming the target of influence on a massive scale. Public perception became a battlefield, and on that battlefield, Octavian proved exceptionally effective. The environment around Cleopatra was changing. The world was changing. Rome was moving towards centralized imperial rule. Independent kingdoms were becoming increasingly vulnerable. The strategies that had previously secured survival were becoming less effective. Yet leaders often struggle to recognize when the rules themselves have changed. This is not unique to Cleopatra. It appears repeatedly throughout history. Power rewards certain behaviors. Success reinforces those behaviors. Then circumstances evolve. The same methods that once produced victories begin producing failures, but by then, habits are deeply established. The final confrontation came at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. It was a decisive moment. The combined forces of Antony and Cleopatra faced Octavian's fleet. The outcome would determine the future of the Mediterranean. Defeat followed. And with defeat came collapse. Military losses accelerated political losses. Political losses accelerated personal despair. Alliances dissolved. Options narrowed. The future that Cleopatra had spent decades constructing began unraveling. What followed is among history's most famous endings. Antony died. Cleopatra soon followed. The precise details remain debated, but the broader reality is clear. The final independent ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt was gone, and with her disappearance, an era ended. Egypt became part of Rome. A kingdom that had existed for centuries lost its autonomy. A civilization entered a new chapter under foreign rule. Yet the most fascinating aspect of Cleopatra's story may not be her rise or her fall. It may be the psychological balancing act she maintained throughout her life. She governed under extraordinary pressure. Every decision carried consequences far beyond personal survival. Most people experience stress through family, career, or financial concerns. Cleopatra carried the burden of an entire state's future. This pressure likely reinforced traits that made her successful: adaptability, strategic thinking, emotional intelligence. But pressure can also magnify weaknesses. It can encourage risk-taking. It can narrow perspective. It can create a sense that every challenge requires increasingly dramatic solutions. Perhaps this explains part of Cleopatra's enduring fascination. She represents a contradiction found in many powerful individuals. Her greatest strengths and greatest vulnerabilities emerge from the same source. Her determination enabled survival. Her ambition enabled influence. Yet those same qualities may also have contributed to decisions that increase risk during critical moments. In this sense, Cleopatra resembles many leaders throughout history, from emperors to presidents, from military commanders to corporate founders. Success often creates the conditions for future failure. Not because successful people become foolish, because power changes the information they receive. It changes their relationships, it changes their perception of reality. The world begins responding differently to them, and eventually they begin responding differently to the world. The influence of Cleopatra extends far beyond her lifetime. She became a symbol. To some, she represented resistance against overwhelming forces. To others, political intelligence. To others still, the dangers of ambition. The fact that so many interpretations exist is itself revealing. Historical figures fade when their stories become simple. Cleopatra's story remains alive because it resists simplification. She was neither purely victim nor villain, neither merely romantic nor purely calculating. She was a ruler navigating one of history's most unstable periods. A leader attempting to preserve independence in a world increasingly dominated by empire. And perhaps that is the final lesson. History often remembers victories. But influence is not measured only by who wins. Sometimes influence is measured by who continues to shape conversations long after their defeat. Empires rise, empires fall. Political systems emerge and disappear. Yet certain individuals continue to force us to ask uncomfortable questions. How much control do leaders truly possess over events? At what point does adaptation become compromise? And how do people maintain clarity when surrounded by power? More than 2,000 years after her death, Cleopatra still invites those questions, not because she conquered the world, but because she stood at the edge of a changing world and tried, against immense odds, to shape its future. The attempt failed. The influence did not.